"He's in a hoodie and sunglasses," the gate agent whispered, eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Security risk. We can't let him board." But the man didn't flinch. Calm and composed, he simply pulled out his business card. The CEO of a Fortune 500 company. By the next day, the very airline denying him passage would answer to him. Welcome to Stories by Xavier. Let's uncover what really happened. Marcus Ellis had never been one to crave the spotlight. As CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country, his name was known in boardrooms and on business channels. But today, he wanted to travel under the radar. Sporting a simple black hoodie pulled up over his head, dark sunglasses masking his eyes, and casual sneakers, Marcus walked through the bustling terminal of the city's international airport like any other traveler. No entourage, no flashy luggage, just a man focused on catching his flight quietly. He had an important meeting scheduled overseas, one that could seal a multi-million-dollar deal. Yet Marcus preferred to arrive early, to keep his mind clear, to blend into the sea of travelers all chasing their own stories. It wasn't just about discretion. It was about reclaiming a sense of normalcy in a world that often judged success by appearance and attire. He knew firsthand the weight of stereotypes, the subtle glances, and outright assumptions that came with being a black man in a hoodie in public spaces. The airport buzzed with the usual symphony of rolling suitcases, hurried announcements, and the hum of excited chatter. Marcus navigated the sea of travelers with practiced ease, heading straight for the gate of his connecting flight. The airline had been his usual choice for years, a company whose services he respected and relied on for business trips. Today, though, something felt different. As he approached the gate, Marcus noticed the gate agent's eyes flicker toward him with an intensity that lingered too long to be casual. It was the first time in a long while that he felt the unmistakable weight of suspicion aimed squarely at him. Marcus kept walking, his expression neutral, but his senses alert. He was about to learn that even in the most ordinary places, the past shadows people's perceptions, and that appearance could become an obstacle no amount of success could easily erase. Marcus stood patiently near the gate, checking his boarding pass one last time as the crowd thinned around him. The usual buzz of pre-flight chatter was punctuated by the occasional call for passengers to board, yet attention lingered just beneath the surface. He caught the gate agent's eyes once again, a woman with sharp features and a practiced smile. But this time, her gaze was unmistakably wary, flickering with something that felt less professional and more personal. "Sir, may I have your attention, please?" she called out, her voice firm but polite. Marcus turned toward her, expecting the routine boarding instructions. Instead, her tone shifted subtly, as if weighing him up rather than simply assisting. "We have some concerns about your presence here," she said, glancing briefly at the security monitors behind her. "You match the description of a security risk flagged for this flight." The words hung heavy in the air, a statement both vague and damning. Marcus's heartbeat quickened, but his face remained calm, unreadable. He cleared his throat and replied evenly, "Could you clarify what you mean by security risk?" His voice was steady, but his mind raced. He knew all too well how quickly misunderstandings could escalate, especially when filtered through bias and assumptions. The gate agent shifted uncomfortably, but maintained her professional facade. "There have been reports," she said carefully, "and it's our duty to ensure the safety of all passengers." Her eyes flicked to a nearby supervisor before returning to Marcus. The implication was clear. His attire, demeanor, and identity raised red flags in a system built to prioritize certain profiles over others. Passengers nearby began to notice the exchange. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some curious, some uneasy. Marcus felt the familiar sting of being judged, not for who he was, but for what others feared he might be. Yet even as doubt clouded the moment, Marcus held fast to a quiet resolve. This encounter was not going to define him. The gate agent's words lingered in the cold air between them, carrying an accusation that Marcus refused to accept silently. Around them, the buzz of the airport felt distant, as if the world had momentarily narrowed to this uncomfortable confrontation. Marcus met her gaze steadily, refusing to let frustration or anger show on his face. "I'm sorry, but I cannot allow you to board this flight at this time," the agent said firmly. "It's a security protocol." She spoke as if rehearsing lines, her tone devoid of empathy, yet laden with an unspoken judgment. Marcus's mind raced through the implications. Denied boarding? On what grounds? For a moment, the injustice of it all weighed heavily on him. Here he was, a CEO of a thriving company, someone trusted by partners worldwide, reduced to a security risk because of his appearance. "May I ask the specific reason for this decision?" Marcus inquired, voice calm but resolute. He wanted clarity and to expose the flimsy foundation beneath her claim. The agent hesitated, the practiced smile faltering for just a moment. "I'm afraid I can't share all the details due to security regulations," she replied. "But I assure you it's in the best interest of everyone's safety." Behind her, a few passengers shifted uncomfortably, some shooting curious glances Marcus's way. Whispers rippled through the crowd, speculation building around the sudden denial. Marcus pulled out his phone, his fingers tapping quickly as he considered his options. He knew anger wouldn't help. This was a battle for dignity, for respect, fought on a different level. So instead of confrontation, he chose composure and strategy. He placed his phone away and looked the agent directly in the eyes. "I am Marcus Ellis, CEO of Ellis Innovations. I have a confirmed reservation, and I expect to board this flight without discrimination." The agent's expression tightened. She glanced around, perhaps for support, but none came. Marcus's quiet confidence filled the space, challenging the unspoken biases that had led to this moment. The gate agent took a breath, but didn't relent. The board had been set. The game was just beginning. Marcus stood his ground, every inch the composed leader who had faced far tougher battles than this one. Despite the sting of being judged by his hoodie and skin color, he refused to let the gate agent's accusations shake his dignity. The terminal seemed to pulse with tension as bystanders watched the exchange unfold silently, sensing the gravity beneath the surface. "I understand security is paramount," Marcus said evenly, his tone firm but respectful. "But I also believe that protocols must be applied fairly and without prejudice. I have complied with every requirement, and I am prepared to cooperate fully." The gate agent's eyes flickered with uncertainty for the first time. The rehearsed confidence that had fueled her earlier refusal wavered in the face of Marcus's calm, unyielding presence. She glanced toward her supervisor, who avoided eye contact, as if unsure how to proceed. Passengers nearby began to whisper, some quietly supporting Marcus, others uncomfortable with the growing discomfort. Marcus caught a few nods of approval, subtle gestures that reminded him he was not alone in this fight. He pulled out his boarding pass again and held it up clearly. "I have confirmation from your airline. I request that you honor my reservation." His voice carried a weight that went beyond the airport walls, a quiet demand for respect and equality. The gate agent's lips pressed into a thin line. She glanced at her clipboard, then at the supervisor again. It was clear that her authority was limited, yet she clung to it stubbornly. Marcus exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about boarding a plane. It was a test of principles, a moment that exposed deeper cracks in a system built on assumptions and fear. He lowered his gaze briefly, recalling past moments where composure had been his weapon. Then he lifted his eyes, steady and clear. "I am here to travel, not to provoke conflict, but I will not be denied because of how I choose to present myself." A hush settled over the gate area. The battle lines had been drawn, but Marcus knew that real power didn't come from anger or loud protests. It came from quiet defiance and unshakable resolve. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek, black leather card holder. With deliberate calm, he opened it and extracted a crisp business card, the silver lettering gleaming under the terminal lights. He held it out toward the gate agent without haste, his eyes never leaving hers. "I don't usually carry this when I travel," he said softly, voice steady yet imbued with quiet authority. But I want to make one thing clear. I am Marcus Ellis, CEO of Ellis Innovations. This company has partners worldwide, and my travel is both personal and professional. The gate agent blinked, her previous confidence wavering as she took the card. She glanced down briefly, then back up at Marcus. For a fleeting moment, the weight of his presence seemed to fill the small space between them. Around them, a few passengers leaned in, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. Some exchanged glances, others subtly pulled out their phones. The incident was becoming more than a simple security question. It was a challenge to ingrained assumptions. Marcus smiled faintly, not out of triumph, but to ease the tension. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. "I'm here to travel, to do business, and to remind everyone that appearances can be deceiving." The gate agent's lips pressed into a thin line. She tucked the card into her pocket, but the guarded expression in her eyes had softened slightly. The authority she wielded suddenly seemed less absolute. Just then, the gate's supervisor approached, drawn by the unfolding scene. He looked at Marcus, then at the gate agent, and finally at the crowd gathering around. His voice cut through the silence. "Let's step aside and review this matter privately," he suggested. The gate agent nodded reluctantly. Marcus gave a respectful nod in return. He knew this was only the beginning. This moment, small yet charged, would ripple far beyond the terminal. It was a turning point, the calm before a storm of change. As they moved away from the gate, Marcus's mind raced, not with anger, but with purpose. The business card was more than an introduction. It was a statement, and the world was about to listen. Away from the crowded gate area, Marcus and the gate agent found a quieter corner. The gate agent's mask of professionalism tightened as she took a deep breath, steeling herself to maintain control. Yet beneath her calm exterior lay the uncertainty stirred by Marcus's quiet insistence. "I understand who you say you are," she began, her voice low but firm. "But our protocols aren't about titles or business cards. They're about safety. You must understand, this isn't personal." Marcus nodded slowly. "I understand the importance of security, but it is personal when judgments are made based on assumptions. When a hoodie becomes a symbol of suspicion rather than a choice of comfort." The gate agent looked away briefly, then back, her eyes reflecting a flicker of conflict. "We receive descriptions from security that sometimes match passengers' appearances. If there is a concern, we must act." Marcus leaned in just slightly, his voice calm but unyielding. "Then let me ask you this. Have you ever stopped to consider how those concerns might be influenced by bias, conscious or unconscious? How often might people be denied because of who they are rather than what they've done?" The agent's shoulders stiffened. "That's not for me to decide. We follow orders." A silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Marcus's mind raced, not with anger, but with resolve. The gate agent represented a system larger than herself, a system that thrived on fear and convenience rather than fairness. "I'm not here to accuse you personally," Marcus said gently, "but this system needs to change. And if no one speaks up, nothing will." The gate agent's gaze dropped to the floor. Marcus saw the weight of responsibility press down on her, the conflict between duty and conscience. As they stood there, the hum of the airport seemed distant again, as if the world held its breath for what would come next. Marcus knew this was just the start of a battle far bigger than the terminal gate. The question was, who would have the courage to fight it? Back near the gate, the murmurs of the unfolding confrontation had begun to spread among the waiting passengers. Eyes darted between Marcus and the gate agent as tension thickened the air. Some passengers whispered softly to their companions, exchanging glances that mixed curiosity, sympathy, and unease. A middle-aged woman, clutching a travel guidebook, looked on with furrowed brows. A young man beside her, earbuds dangling, stopped scrolling on his phone just long enough to take in the scene. Several travelers discreetly pulled out their own phones, fingers hovering as if debating whether to record or simply watch. Among the crowd, a few quietly nodded in silent support of Marcus, recognizing the unfairness etched in the exchange. A businessman adjusting his tie shifted closer, as if to better hear what was happening, while a group of college students nearby exchanged surprised glances, clearly unsettled by the unexpected drama. The whispers grew louder. "Did you hear what they said? Why is he being treated like that? That doesn't seem right." But no one stepped forward. Most stayed frozen in place, unsure if this was their fight or theirs to witness silently. Marcus sensed their eyes on him, their unspoken questions. Yet, he maintained his calm, refusing to let their pity or hesitation influence him. This was never about winning the approval of strangers. It was about demanding the respect that had always been due. The gate agent, aware of the growing audience, glanced nervously around, her composure beginning to crack. She shifted from foot to foot, but her voice remained steady when she addressed Marcus once more. Behind the scenes, airport security personnel had started to take notice, inching closer to assess the situation. The subtle but unmistakable signs that this incident might escalate were becoming clear. Marcus's thoughts flickered briefly to the stakes ahead. What began as a simple boarding procedure was now a public test of dignity, equality, and justice. The crowd's silent watch would soon transform into a larger reckoning. But for now, the tension was held in a fragile balance, waiting for the next move from Marcus, the gate agent, or someone watching in the crowd. As the crowd's eyes lingered on the tense standoff, Marcus took a subtle step back, allowing the weight of the moment to settle over him. Behind his sunglasses, his mind drifted to the countless times he had faced this kind of judgment, the invisible barriers, the silent assumptions, the heavy burden of being misread. He recalled boardrooms where his ideas were questioned not on merit, but on the rarity of his presence as a black man in a sea of suits. He thought of airports past, where casual attire was met with suspicion only when worn by him. The hoodie he wore today was more than clothing. It was armor and a statement, a refusal to be boxed in by expectation. Memories flashed. A business meeting where a client once asked if he was an assistant. A conference where the security team watched him longer than anyone else. A gala event where whispers trailed behind him like shadows. Each incident chipped away at the illusion that success could erase bias. But Marcus also remembered his victories. The late nights spent coding innovations that transformed industries. The deals brokered through sheer determination. The employees inspired by his resilience. These moments built a foundation stronger than any prejudice. He knew this airport confrontation was just a chapter in a much larger story, one where the system itself needed transformation. He wasn't just fighting for himself, but for those whose voices were muted by fear or fatigue. Taking a deep breath, Marcus pushed away the lingering sting of unfairness. Today's challenge was not a detour, but a call to action. He understood that power was not just about wealth or titles. It was about using those resources to break down barriers and create change. The hoodie remained a symbol, not of risk, but of identity, strength, and defiance. And in this moment, Marcus was ready to turn a personal slight into a catalyst that would shake the very foundations of the airline and beyond. As the gate agent's voice echoed again, Marcus refocused, prepared to face the next phase of the battle with unwavering calm. The gate agent's voice sliced through the tense silence once again. "I'm sorry, sir, but you cannot board this flight." The finality in her tone was unmistakable. Marcus felt a weight settle on his shoulders, heavy not because of personal failure, but the magnitude of what this denial represented. Around them, passengers murmured softly, some casting sympathetic looks his way, others averting their eyes. For Marcus, it was a moment both profoundly familiar and deeply painful. Reduced from a respected CEO to an unwelcome stranger because of appearance and prejudice. He stood tall, composed, refusing to let anger dictate his response. Instead, a quiet storm brewed beneath his calm exterior, a determination to turn this humiliation into a reckoning. "I have a confirmed reservation," Marcus said clearly, his voice unwavering. "Please explain how this decision aligns with your policies on non-discrimination and equal treatment." The gate agent's expression remained impassive, but Marcus sensed hesitation flicker across her features. Our priority is safety. The decision is based on assessments made by security personnel. Marcus shook his head slightly. Safety cannot be an excuse for bias. What is being done to ensure decisions are fair and free from prejudice? She had no immediate answer. The supervisor appeared again, signaling the need to move the conversation along. Passengers continued boarding behind them, oblivious to the injustice unfolding in plain sight. Marcus's mind raced. Denial of boarding was just the first battle. The real war was against the systemic assumptions and policies that allowed such decisions without accountability. He thought about the countless others who had faced similar treatment but lacked the resources to fight back. This was not just his story, it was theirs. With resolve hardening, Marcus prepared to take action beyond the terminal, knowing that his next moves would not only change his fate, but challenge an entire industry. The boarding call continued, but Marcus remained rooted, determined that this moment would not be the end, but the beginning of a profound transformation. Denied boarding was a blow, but Marcus Ellis wasn't one to retreat. As the gate agent's curt dismissal echoed behind him, he turned away with a calm that masked the fire building inside. This was not a defeat, it was a challenge. A challenge that demanded a response both strategic and decisive. Back in the quiet of a nearby lounge, Marcus sat down with his phone and laptop. His fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard as he began assembling a team. Legal advisors, public relations experts, and trusted allies who understood the power of a well-crafted fight. This was not a moment for rash anger, but calculated action. He drafted an initial message to his inner circle. The subject, Security Risk Incident. Immediate response plan. His words were clear. This was about more than a single airport or airline. It was a systemic problem demanding systemic change. As the plan took shape, Marcus's mind ran through every detail. The gate agent's words, the looks from fellow passengers, the silent assumptions. The entire experience was a microcosm of the bias ingrained in society's structures. But now, the scales could be tipped. Overnight, Marcus mobilized contacts in the media and influential networks, preparing for a narrative that would control the story rather than let it control him. Social media strategists were enlisted to amplify the message, to turn public opinion from quiet sympathy to active demand for justice. But Marcus's vision was bigger than headlines or hashtags. He was preparing to use his greatest weapon, his business acumen and financial power. This wasn't just a fight for respect. It was a fight for accountability and reform. His phone buzzed with messages of support and strategy. Allies confirmed legal avenues, potential partnerships, and ways to pressure the airline's leadership. The path was clear. Turn the personal injustice into a public reckoning. Marcus paused, taking a breath. The denial at the gate was only the first move in a game that would reshape power dynamics in the airline industry. His quiet fury was no longer silent. It was a force about to be unleashed. The next morning, Marcus's phone was already buzzing with activity. His legal team had drafted letters citing violations of anti-discrimination laws and passenger rights. His public relations experts worked on press releases designed to highlight the broader issue of systemic bias in the airline industry. Every message was crafted with precision, calm, factual, and unyielding. Marcus sat at his sleek home office desk, eyes scanning the responses flooding in. Executives at Ellis Innovations were alerted to stand ready for any media inquiries. The company's board understood this was more than a personal grievance. It was a statement about corporate responsibility and social justice. Meanwhile, Marcus contacted a few key figures in the airline's corporate hierarchy. His tone was direct but measured. We need to address this incident immediately. There will be consequences if it's swept under the rug. As word spread, the airline's PR team scrambled to manage the brewing storm. Calls came in from Marcus's camp demanding an internal investigation and public apology. The airline's leadership convened emergency meetings to assess the fallout and potential damage to their brand reputation. Marcus's strategy was clear: leverage his influence to force accountability. He was prepared to escalate matters through regulatory channels and shareholder pressure if necessary. The message was simple: discrimination would not be tolerated, and business as usual was over. Behind the scenes, Marcus's team began exploring the possibility of acquiring a stake in the airline. This was no impulsive move. It was a calculated step to gain leverage and enact real change from within. The airline's vulnerabilities were laid bare, and Marcus intended to use them strategically. His thoughts raced ahead to the boardroom battles that awaited, but for now, he focused on maintaining momentum. Every email sent, every phone call made, was a building block toward transforming personal injustice into corporate reform. The quiet CEO in a hoodie was no longer invisible. Marcus Ellis was becoming a force that no one could ignore. The story leaked quietly at first. An anonymous tip sent to a major news outlet. A few curious journalists picking up on the unusual incident at the airport. Within hours, social media exploded with snippets of the story, and Marcus's encounter became a symbol of a larger, systemic problem. The headline read, "Black CEO denied boarding, calls security risk, airport incident sparks outrage." Accompanying photos of Marcus in his hoodie, calm yet dignified, circulated widely. Tweets, shares, and comments poured in from all corners of the globe. The hashtag not a security risk trended rapidly, fueled by stories from others who had faced similar discrimination. Marcus watched the news cycle with a mix of satisfaction and caution. The narrative was shifting in his favor, but he knew media attention was a double-edged sword. The airline's PR team launched damage control, releasing statements promising investigations and zero tolerance for discrimination. But their words felt hollow to many. Public pressure mounted as influential figures joined the conversation. Advocates for racial equality, corporate diversity experts, and even politicians demanded answers. Interviews with Marcus began to appear, where he spoke not just about his personal experience, but the urgent need for systemic change in travel and beyond. Behind the scenes, Marcus's team coordinated with journalists, providing documentation and framing the story to maintain focus on justice rather than personal drama. Every detail mattered. At the airline's headquarters, the mood grew tense. Executives were forced to confront a crisis that no amount of glossy advertising could mask. The brand's reputation, built on luxury and exclusivity, was now threatened by revelations of prejudice and exclusion. Marcus's calm had ignited a firestorm, but he remained focused, using the momentum not to inflame anger, but to push for meaningful reform. This was no viral moment to fade away. It was a movement with staying power, demanding accountability and respect. As the world watched, the lines between business, justice, and social responsibility blurred. And at the center of it all was a man in a hoodie, challenging the status quo with quiet strength and strategic vision. The hashtag not a security risk exploded overnight, flooding social media platforms with stories, videos, and messages of solidarity. People from every walk of life shared their experiences of subtle and overt discrimination, creating a powerful tapestry of voices united against bias. Celebrities, activists, and everyday users lent their support, amplifying the call for justice. Marcus watched the movement grow with cautious optimism. This was no longer just his fight. It was a collective demand for change that resonated globally. Social media became a battleground where truth confronted prejudice head-on, unfiltered and raw. Influencers posted heartfelt videos dissecting the incident, praising Marcus for his calm dignity and strategic response. Online petitions circulated, demanding the airline institute comprehensive diversity, training, and accountability measures. Thousands signed on within hours, turning a single boarding denial into a nationwide reckoning. Meanwhile, critics emerged too, some dismissing the event as an overreaction, others questioning Marcus's choice of attire. But the overwhelming tide of support drowned out the noise. The story had tapped into a deeper frustration with systemic injustice, striking a chord far beyond the airport gates. The airline's social media channels became a focal point for heated discussions. Customer service teams struggled to respond to the surge of inquiries and complaints. Each unanswered question added fuel to the growing firestorm, pressuring executives to act swiftly. Marcus's legal and PR teams monitored the digital pulse closely, adjusting their messaging to keep the narrative focused on fairness and reform. They encouraged respectful dialogue while condemning hate speech, ensuring the movement stayed credible and impactful. Back in the boardrooms of Ellis Innovations, the campaign's momentum strengthened Marcus's hand. Shareholders and partners voiced their support, recognizing the opportunity to lead by example in corporate social responsibility. The social media outcry was not just a reaction, it was a call to action, and Marcus Ellis was determined to answer it with the power of influence and the weight of change. With the momentum building from media coverage and social media outrage, Marcus decided it was time to directly confront the airline's leadership. He drafted a firm, yet professional email to the CEO and board members of the airline, making it clear that the incident was unacceptable and required immediate attention. The email outlined the sequence of events at the gate, supported by witness accounts and preliminary media reports. Marcus emphasized the need for transparency, accountability, and a public commitment to reform. He made it clear that the situation was not just a personal grievance, but a symptom of deeper systemic problems within the airline's culture. Within hours, his message was acknowledged by the airline's public relations department. A spokesperson promised a thorough internal investigation and assured Marcus that they took the allegations seriously. But Marcus knew words alone would not suffice. Actions had to follow. He requested a meeting with the airline's executive team, signaling his intention to escalate the matter if his concerns were not adequately addressed. Behind the scenes, Marcus's legal advisors prepared for all eventualities, including regulatory complaints and shareholder actions. The airline's leadership found themselves under unprecedented pressure. The public's eyes were fixed on them, and investors began demanding reassurances about the company's governance and ethical standards. Marcus's approach was strategic. He positioned himself not only as a wrong passenger, but as a powerful stakeholder capable of influencing the airline's future. He hinted at possible financial moves that would compel the airline to listen and act. This shift in dynamics unsettled the airline's board. What had started as a customer service issue was rapidly evolving into a corporate governance crisis. Meetings were scheduled, emergency calls made, and crisis teams assembled. Marcus remained calm and calculated, knowing that patience and precision were key. His objective was clear: to hold the airline accountable and drive meaningful, lasting change. As the airline scrambled to respond, Marcus prepared for the next phase of his plan, one that would alter the company's trajectory and leave an indelible mark on the industry. The atmosphere inside the airline's boardroom was thick with tension. Executives gathered around a polished mahogany table, their faces a mixture of concern and defensiveness. The incident involving Marcus Ellis had escalated rapidly, thrusting the company into the harsh glare of public scrutiny. At the head of the table sat the CEO, a seasoned leader used to managing crises, but unprepared for this scale of backlash. Around him, board members exchanged uneasy glances, aware that the company's reputation, built painstakingly over decades, was now at risk of irreparable damage. The airline's legal counsel outlined the potential liabilities, emphasizing the urgency of swift and decisive action. Public relations executives presented data on the social media storm, the growing hashtag #NotASecurityRisk campaign, and mounting calls for accountability. As the discussion unfolded, the CEO's phone buzzed insistently. A message from Marcus's office arrived, a formal proposal to purchase a controlling stake in the airline, accompanied by a detailed plan for cultural reform and governance overhaul. The boardroom fell silent. Some members exchanged surprised looks, questioning the audacity of Marcus's move. Others saw opportunity, a chance to bring in leadership capable of transforming the company's culture and restoring public trust. Debate ignited. Would selling a controlling interest to a vocal critic help or hurt the airline? Could Marcus's vision align with the company's existing goals? Were they prepared to relinquish control to someone who had publicly challenged them? Meanwhile, Marcus and his advisors coordinated their approach, ready to leverage shareholder support and regulatory channels to push the acquisition forward. The board faced a pivotal decision: resist and risk continued fallout, or embrace change led by an unexpected figure in a hoodie. As the meeting adjourned, the CEO looked out the window, knowing the company's future hinged on the choices made in the coming days. This was no longer just a story about one man denied boarding. It was a reckoning for the airline and an inflection point in the industry's approach to equity and leadership. With the boardroom buzzing and public pressure mounting, Marcus prepared his boldest move yet. In a meticulously crafted letter, he formally offered to purchase a controlling stake in the airline. This was no impulsive decision, but a strategic step to enact real change from within. The offer outlined his vision: transforming the airline's culture, overhauling discriminatory policies, and setting new industry standards for inclusion and respect. Marcus emphasized that leadership had to reflect the diversity of the customers served, and that true excellence required equity at every level. The letter circulated quickly among shareholders and executives, stirring a mix of shock, skepticism, and cautious optimism. Marcus's reputation as a savvy businessman lent weight to the proposal, and many recognized the potential for a revitalized company under his stewardship. News of the offer leaked to the media, intensifying public interest. Headlines hailed the move as a powerful statement against discrimination and a rare instance of a victim turning injustice into opportunity. Behind closed doors, negotiations began in earnest. Marcus and his team navigated complex financial and legal terrain, balancing the ambition to transform with the realities of corporate governance. At the airline's headquarters, the mood was charged. Some executives bristled at the prospect of surrendering control. Others saw the inevitability of change and the chance to be part of a new chapter. Marcus remained calm but resolute. His focus was on building bridges while holding firm to the principles that had driven him from the moment he was labeled a security risk. The purchase offer was more than a business transaction. It was a declaration that prejudice would no longer be tolerated, and that power could be wielded to dismantle systemic barriers. As the negotiations unfolded, Marcus prepared for the final stages of a journey that began with a simple hoodie and ended with a promise to rewrite the rules. Marcus Ellis's bold move sent shockwaves through the airline industry and the business world at large. Headlines splashed across newspapers and digital platforms, declaring the unprecedented acquisition of a major airline by a CEO who had been publicly denied boarding just days earlier. The story wasn't just about business. It was a powerful statement against systemic racism and exclusion. Executives at rival airlines watched closely, some alarmed by the potential shift in power dynamics, others inspired by the promise of cultural reform. Industry analysts debated the implications. Would Marcus's leadership spark a wave of diversity-driven changes? Could his example force airlines everywhere to confront uncomfortable truths? Investors scrambled to reassess their positions. Shareholder meetings grew more charged as calls for transparency and inclusivity became impossible to ignore. Marcus's approach redefined the narrative around corporate responsibility, showing that ethical leadership and financial success could coexist. Inside Ellis Innovations, the acquisition was celebrated as a triumph of vision and perseverance. Employees saw in Marcus a leader who embodied resilience and the courage to challenge the status quo. His story became a beacon for aspiring entrepreneurs facing similar obstacles. Meanwhile, Marcus prepared to take the helm of the airline, knowing the real work was just beginning. The weight of expectations pressed heavily. He was not only steering a company, but carrying the hopes of those marginalized by outdated systems. Public conversations about race, equity, and privilege in travel and service industries gained renewed vigor. Activists and advocacy groups cited Marcus's journey as proof that change was possible, but only with bold action and unrelenting resolve. The airline's brand was at a crossroads: evolve or risk obsolescence. Marcus's arrival signaled a commitment to evolve, to dismantle barriers, and to create a culture where all customers and employees felt valued. As the industry held its breath, Marcus stepped into his new role, ready to lead with the same quiet strength that had turned rejection into revolution. The negotiation phase was a delicate dance between ambition and pragmatism. Marcus and his team entered the airline's boardroom with a clear agenda: secure a controlling stake while ensuring the company's stability during the transition. The airline's executives, wary yet intrigued, prepared to weigh the potential benefits against the risks. Each meeting was a study in strategy. Marcus's legal experts presented detailed analyses of the airline's financial health, market position, and regulatory landscape. Simultaneously, his advisors highlighted the cultural imperatives driving the acquisition: diversity, equity, and inclusion as pillars for sustainable growth. Opposing voices in the airline resisted change, fearful of losing influence and control. They questioned whether Marcus's vision could be executed without disrupting daily operations or alienating loyal customers. But others saw the opportunity to revitalize the brand and regain public trust. Behind closed doors, Marcus listened carefully to concerns and counterproposals, adjusting his approach without compromising core values. His calm demeanor and data-driven arguments earned reluctant respect. He emphasized collaboration, making it clear this was not a hostile takeover but a partnership for progress. The airline's shareholders received briefings, many expressing cautious optimism. The growing public support for Marcus's leadership put additional pressure on the board to approve the deal. Negotiations stretched over weeks, marked by intense discussions on valuation, governance structures, and reform timelines. Marcus insisted on commitments to overhaul training programs, revise hiring practices, and implement transparent accountability mechanisms. Throughout the process, Marcus remained focused on his ultimate goal: transforming an industry long plagued by exclusion into one defined by opportunity and fairness. The turning point came when the airline's board agreed to a conditional approval, contingent on regulatory clearance and shareholder votes. Marcus's team prepared for the next phase, engaging with regulators and rallying shareholder support to finalize the deal. As the negotiations progressed, Marcus's quiet resolve continued to inspire allies and unsettled detractors. The deal was more than a transaction. It was a statement that change was inevitable and overdue. Behind the polished boardroom doors and media spotlight, Marcus Ellis's acquisition journey was a complex symphony of negotiations, strategy sessions, and personal reflection. Late nights blurred into early mornings as his team coordinated with lawyers, financial experts, and industry insiders to ensure every detail was meticulously managed. Marcus himself found moments of quiet amidst the whirlwind, retreating to his private study to recharge and strategize. The pressure was immense. This was more than a business deal. It was a mission to dismantle entrenched biases within an entire industry. He revisited his own story frequently: the Hoodie, the gate agent suspicion, the denial of boarding, and used it as fuel for the relentless pursuit of change. Each memory strengthened his resolve to create a legacy far beyond profit margins. In conference calls, Marcus emphasized to his advisors the importance of cultural transformation alongside financial turnaround. He insisted that the airline's future depended on genuine inclusion, not performative gestures. At the same time, Marcus was mindful of the airline's employees, many of whom were unaware of the brewing upheaval. He planned to engage them early, fostering dialogue and building trust to ensure smooth integration and morale. Personal relationships also played a role. His executive assistant, trusted confidant, and strategist, Aaliyah Grant, managed communications with precision, balancing transparency with discretion. Despite the external spotlight, Marcus remained grounded, drawing strength from his roots and the knowledge that his fight represented many who had faced similar barriers but lacked his resources to respond. The path was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but Marcus viewed every obstacle as an opportunity to demonstrate leadership and redefine success. Behind the scenes, a revolution was quietly taking shape, one where courage, strategy, and vision converged to change not just an airline, but the very narrative of what leadership and justice could look like. After weeks of intense negotiation, careful deliberation, and mounting public pressure, the airline's board of directors convened for the decisive vote. The conference room was tense, the weight of the moment evident on every face around the table. This decision would determine not only the company's future, but also set a precedent for the industry's commitment to equity and change. Marcus Ellis sat quietly outside the room, awaiting the outcome with calm resolve. He knew the stakes. A yes vote would mean a historic shift. A no could stall progress and deepen divisions. Inside, board members debated fiercely. Some voiced concerns over relinquishing control to an outsider, questioning whether Marcus's vision could align with corporate objectives. Others argued passionately for the necessity of transformation, citing the backlash and reputational damage that had already tarnished the brand. Shareholders' interests were front and center, with discussions balancing financial prudence against moral imperative. The potential for revitalizing the airline's culture and market position weighed heavily in favor of Marcus's leadership. After hours of discussion, the chairman called the vote. Hands rose, one by one, signaling approval. The majority was clear. The announcement was swift but profound. Marcus Ellis was authorized to purchase a controlling stake, with the understanding that his strategic plans for cultural overhaul would be implemented immediately. Outside the boardroom, Marcus received the news. A quiet smile touched his lips, not of triumph, but of purpose fulfilled. The journey from a hoodie-wearing passenger denied boarding to the airline's owner was nearly complete. He was acutely aware that this was just the beginning. The real work, transforming policies, training, and corporate culture, lay ahead. But with the board's approval, Marcus had the mandate and the platform to enact lasting change. The decision resonated far beyond corporate walls, symbolizing a breakthrough in the fight against systemic discrimination in industries long resistant to reform. Marcus stood tall, ready to lead the airline and the industry into a new era where respect, inclusion, and justice were not optional, but foundational. The day of the press conference arrived with a buzz that rippled through the media landscape. Reporters from major outlets gathered at the airline's headquarters, cameras poised and microphones ready to capture a historic moment. The story of Marcus Ellis had become a symbol of resilience and systemic change, and all eyes were on him. Marcus stepped onto the stage, dressed simply but with unmistakable presence. Gone was the hoodie. He wore a tailored suit that spoke of professionalism without pretension. His gaze scanned the crowd, calm and confident. He began by acknowledging the incident that had sparked this journey. What started as a personal affront became a call for justice. Not just for me, but for countless others who face prejudice every day, he said. His voice carried a quiet power, each word deliberate. He outlined the commitments he intended to uphold as the new controlling stakeholder. Policies would be overhauled, training programs revamped, and accountability mechanisms put in place. Marcus emphasized that this was not merely a business decision, but a moral imperative. Questions flew from the audience about the acquisition, the airline's future, and how he planned to implement change. Marcus answered each with transparency and resolve, emphasizing collaboration and respect. The press conference wasn't just about words. It was a turning point. The message was clear. Discrimination would no longer be tolerated under his leadership. He spoke not with anger, but with the determination of someone who had faced adversity and emerged stronger. Outside the venue, social media erupted once more, sharing clips and quotes that would inspire ongoing conversations about equity and leadership. For Marcus, the moment was bittersweet, a victory forged from pain but transformed into hope. He understood the responsibility he now carried and the challenges ahead. As the conference concluded, Marcus stepped away from the podium, ready to turn promises into action. His journey from being labeled a security risk to owning the airline had captivated the world, but it was only the beginning of a new chapter. With the acquisition finalized, Marcus Ellis wasted no time initiating the most ambitious cultural overhaul the airline had ever seen. His vision was clear: transform an institution long marred by exclusion into a model of equity, respect, and inclusion. The first order of business was a comprehensive review of company policies. Marcus assembled a diverse advisory council, including experts in diversity, equity, and inclusion, to identify areas where systemic biases had taken root. Transparent audits revealed troubling patterns in hiring, promotions, and customer service practices. Mandatory training programs were launched for all employees, focusing not only on unconscious bias, but also on fostering empathy, cultural competence, and respectful communication. Marcus believed that true change required understanding, not just compliance. He introduced new feedback channels, encouraging employees and passengers alike to report discrimination without fear of retaliation. Accountability became a cornerstone of the new corporate ethos, with clear consequences for violations. Marcus also prioritized leadership diversity, actively recruiting executives and board members from underrepresented groups. His goal was to reflect the rich diversity of the customers the airline served at every level of decision-making. These changes sent ripples through the organization. Some employees resisted the shift, clinging to old norms, but many embraced the opportunity to be part of a more just and inclusive culture. Open forums and listening sessions became regular fixtures, promoting dialogue and healing. The airline's brand began to evolve, gaining praise for its commitment to social responsibility. Passengers noticed the difference, from improved service interactions to a welcoming environment where everyone felt valued. Marcus's approach was not about quick fixes, but sustainable transformation. He understood that dismantling entrenched biases required patience, persistence, and leadership by example. As the weeks passed, the airline's culture visibly changed, setting new industry standards and inspiring other companies to follow suit. For Marcus, this was the true victory, turning a painful personal experience into a catalyst for systemic reform, proving that leadership rooted in justice could reshape even the most resistant institutions. The morning light filtered through the expansive windows of the airline's headquarters as Marcus Ellis arrived for his first day as the controlling owner. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Employees curious, executives cautious, the entire organization aware that a new era was beginning. Marcus walked through the lobby with purposeful strides, his presence commanding respect without demanding it. The same hoodie was replaced by a crisp suit, but the core of the man remained unchanged, calm, focused, and ready to lead. He was greeted by department heads and frontline staff, many offering tentative smiles and cautious greetings. Marcus made a point to engage directly, listening intently to their hopes, concerns, and ideas. His approach was inclusive, bridging gaps between management and employees. In his first executive meeting, Marcus laid out his immediate priorities, accelerating the cultural overhaul, enhancing customer experience, and improving operational efficiency. He emphasized transparency, inviting feedback and collaboration at every level. Questions arose about the pace of change, resource allocation, and how past grievances would be addressed. Marcus met each concern with patience and honesty, reinforcing his commitment to justice and progress. Throughout the day, he toured various departments, maintenance, customer service, security, observing firsthand how policies translated into practice. He took note of areas needing improvement and praised those embodying the new values. The media coverage continued outside, capturing images of the CEO, engaging with employees, and articulating a vision of an airline transformed by equity and respect. Marcus understood that leadership was not a title, but an ongoing responsibility to embody the change he sought. His journey from passenger to owner symbolized the power of resilience and strategic action. As the day drew to a close, Marcus stood overlooking the city skyline, reflecting on the road traveled and the path ahead. The challenges were many, but so were the opportunities. He was not just running an airline, he was steering a movement, and today marked the first chapter of that future. As the sun set over the city skyline, Marcus Ellis found a quiet moment to reflect on the extraordinary journey that had brought him here. From a hoodie-clad passenger labeled a security risk to the owner of the very airline that once denied him boarding, his path was marked by resilience, strategy, and unwavering conviction. He thought about the countless individuals whose voices had been silenced by prejudice, the systemic barriers embedded in institutions long resistant to change. His fight was never just personal. It was a beacon for all those demanding dignity and fairness. Marcus understood that true leadership meant more than acquiring power. It was about wielding it responsibly to uplift others. The cultural reforms underway were just the beginning of a broader mission to reshape not only the airline, but the industry's approach to diversity and inclusion. He remembered the moments of doubt, the quiet battles fought in boardrooms and airport terminals alike. Yet those challenges had forged a leader committed to justice over convenience, action over rhetoric. The airline's transformation was already visible in policies, employee engagement, and passenger experiences. But Marcus knew change was ongoing, requiring vigilance, humility, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. Outside his office window, planes soared against the twilight sky, a symbol of journeys taken and futures imagined. Marcus smiled softly, knowing his story had inspired a movement far beyond himself. He had shown that power need not shout to be heard. Sometimes, it only needed to sit firmly in the right seat and act decisively. His letter to a young aspiring professional lay on his desk, a reminder that progress was built on the courage of those willing to challenge norms quietly but persistently. Marcus Ellis was not just rewriting a company's story. He was helping to author a new chapter in corporate America, a chapter where equity, respect, and opportunity were more than ideals, but realities. As the night deepened, Marcus looked ahead with hope and determination, ready to lead a future where no one would be defined by their appearance, but by their character and contributions.